Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, June 27th, 2022. If you'd please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Mr. Fogel, before we start with the student recognitions, I would like to just take one moment to recognize a grown-up. I would just like to thank Mr. Justin Brown for stepping up when we really needed him to join us on the Board of Education for his interim term. And tonight is his last meeting. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you very much. Do you have any parting words you'd like to share? Although you do have to stay for the whole meeting.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. To President Skinner, Osborne, Dr. Joy, and Ogden. I was honored to be able to sit on this board and learn of all the hard work that goes into making Jefferson County schools the great system it is. Of course, Dr. Gibson learned, the whole team at the admin, of course, the great teachers and staff of Jefferson County. I'm just honored to try and represent the community as best we could here. And I was excited to learn and see all the great things that happen behind the scenes. And I want to wish you Godspeed going forward as you continue to make this system great for all in the midst of this transitional education time period. The great work that is still going on here in Jefferson County is to be commended. And I'm proud to be not just a board member for this last night, but part of this community as well. So thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Along with a strong community, we're blessed with amazing students who are constantly achieving not only in the classroom, but in the community and on the sports field. And we don't normally at this time of year get a chance to recognize our students, but we've been remiss over the last several decades, I think, in not being able to properly honor Jefferson High School's baseball team. They had a tremendous season representing our county at the state level. And I would like to invite John Lowry, our longtime coach for the Jefferson High School Cougars, up to introduce some of the students who he was able to get here this summer. The baseball is a demanding mistress, and there's lots of games to be played even in the summer. So many of them are out and about, but I'll let him speak to that more. So.
Thank you all very much for having us here tonight. We appreciate the fact that that you would invite us here, and we are blessed to have a great number of young people who not only excel on the athletic field, but also in the classroom. And I'd like to point out, as before I get to the introductions of our team, that we did have over half of our team have get academic recognition for having a 3.5 grade point average or better. So what that means, they didn't miss many signs. They were smart enough to know what the signs were, and they did a good job in that regard. Very proud of these young men. We have 3 of them with us here tonight. We had 26 on our varsity program that ended up going to the state tournament with us. A number of the men or young men have other obligations, obviously, in the summer. Some work. We've had some that have gone off to school. Finn Horowitz left on the 25th for West Point. Sam Roberts, who is our first baseman, is going to be recruited to play football at Shepherd. He's over there with their weight program tonight. Connor Bailey on our starting outfield. Could you believe it? He had a graduation trip to Europe with his grandmother. So, a number of them are involved in other things, and they play travel ball. And they work very hard during the season. They've had their priorities and things that they want to do in the off season, and that's what we're they're doing now. But again, we appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce two of my assistant coaches who are here. Ken Cross, our pitching coach, and I'd like to note that Coach Cross, one of our pitchers, his pitcher, was the state pitcher of the year, not just the area pitcher of the year, but the state pitcher of the year, which is certainly a distinguished award. And he's worked hard with Finn to get him to that point. Coach Jones, who played for us in the mid '80s, he's been in our program for a number of years. He's our first base coach, and he does a great job with our players. Absent tonight is Archie Dotson, who is also one of our coaches, who is experiencing some medical difficulties. He's having trouble with his lower back to the point where he has a hard time getting around, and we're trying to get hopefully that he can get through that and be back with us next year. The three young men that are with us tonight, if you guys would stand as I call your names. On the left there is Ty Vickers. He's a sophomore. He was a dual rostered player, dual rostered meaning that he splits his time between the varsity and the junior varsity program. The rule in the state is that they can play on both teams as long as they don't play in more than 32 games. So we track that. JJ. I'd like to mention too, Ty was a member of the undefeated basketball team that went to the state tournament. So he has 2 more years with us, and we're looking forward to that. JJ Pavanelli. JJ was the starter for us this year, had a couple of hits in the state tournament game, alternated between third and first with Sam Roberts and Finn being our 2 pitchers, and he would fill in for them at the positions they vacated when they went to the mound. He's a junior, and he's working hard and playing in the summer or a number of the others, as I mentioned, and we're looking forward to having him back next year. Landon Babington. Landon is a junior. He was one of our dual roster players this year. We had an experienced outfield back, with all 3 starters back at the outfield, and Landon was with the varsity and filled in at times in the outfield for us. He's a young man that can run, so we're looking forward to having. We value speed, and he certainly has speed, so we're looking forward to having him back again next year. And it's going down the list here. I'll mention the other members of our team with a little background about him. Sam Hefner, he was a freshman. He was a dual rostered player. Kellen Kinsler, senior, moving on. He has recently visited 2 colleges, AB, Aldous and Broadus, Garrett Community College. He is going to get a chance to play at the next level. Ryan Hefner, a junior, Sam's brother. He was our starting catcher. Sam Wobnetz, who was a senior, who was going to go to Shepherd to play baseball. He was an all-area player on the Journal team, an honorable mention all-state player, and he was also a second-team EPAC player, EPAC being the Eastern Panhandle Athletic Conference. Griffin Horowitz, we mentioned. Connor. Ethan Hall, who was a senior. He was one of our triple Cougar winners. He was out of the bullpen for us, threw a lot of strikes, had 2 wins for us, did a great job of helping us have what not only we felt, but others recognized as being probably the deepest pitching staff in the area. Alston Young's a senior, outstanding young man, a triple Cougar winner for us. And I read in the Journal today where he was a recipient of a $3,000 per year scholarship for his 4 years when he goes to West Virginia University. So, he's moving on to get his education. Darren Gilliam, very athletic young man, a freshman, dual rostered, can really run. We're looking forward to him stepping in and being able to help us next year. Josh Cienfuegos. Josh was a transfer student from Arizona. He came in and he started at second base for us this year. He has gone back to Arizona for the summer, and hopefully he's going to return. His goal is to return, and his father worked with the Border Patrol down here, and I think it's an issue of getting his job situation squared away so he can return. Ty Duncan, a junior infielder for us, looking for big things out of Ty next year as he steps up to fill in the vacated shortstop spot left by Kellen Kinsler. Cole Lewis. Cole Lewis was a sophomore. I think he had the most wins. I know he had the most wins on as a pitcher for our JV team. Plays sporadically at the varsity level, and he's along with these other guys are going to be ready to step up and fill in for some of these guys who have finished their high school careers. Colton Smith. Colton Smith is a junior. Again, he's a versatile player. He could swing the bat a little bit. He can play in the outfield and the infield. He's looking forward to his senior year as well. Noah Carter, a graduate. Noah led our team in on-base percentage and in quality at bat percentage, which is a designation for those who can go to the plate and accomplish certain things in the plate besides just getting a base hit. So he was our DH. Riley Morgan, the left-handed pitcher, who's a sophomore, he had the most strikeouts for us per inning. He struck out 45 and 24 innings of work for us next year, and he's going to hopefully step up and fill in where Finn and Sammy have departed. Logan McCartney, sophomore, utility player in the infield. His brother Dylan played for us 2 years back, and Logan fills the mold of the McCartney family. He's an outstanding young man. Dylan Babe, a left-handed pitcher who won 4 games for us this year. He'll step up again and give us the depth of the pitching staff that we had this year. Hopefully we can continue that. Ryan Kelly, a freshman, one of the 2 freshmen who got to experience some varsity play. He is working hard this summer, and he'll be back, and we're looking for major contributions from Ryan. AJ Spears, he's a sophomore. He was our backup catcher. And I think the significant thing about AJ at this point is that he's at Marshall University for a 3-week program in music. And he's considered, if not the best sophomore drummer in the state, one of the best sophomore drummers in the state. So we're proud of AJ. Blake-Quan Scheib, he's a junior. He'll be a senior next year. He was a valuable member of our pitching staff. He had 5 wins this year. He had multiple wins as a sophomore. He'll be back for his senior year. And last but not least was Matthew Vickers. He too was one of our triple Cougar winners, which is emblematic, if that's how you say the word, of scholarship, of citizenship, of just being a good all-around person that contributes to the team, a good teammate, that type of individual. And Matthew certainly fit the bill there. You know, they ask me a lot of times, they'll say, Coach, what kind of team did you have? And I said, and I'll say, you know, check with me 20 years from now, and that'll tell you what kind of team we had. If these young men go on and they're successful in what they choose to do with their life, if they're good fathers, good parents, good citizens in our community, that's what will tell you whether we've had success. And I'm sure that these guys will grow to that. As we look through the past of a number of kids, been fortunate enough to be involved in this long enough to see a number of guys that have gone on to that level of success. My personal physician now is my shortstop from 1977. So I tell you, you just never know. You never know how things are going to work out. So we're proud of these young men. I'm proud to have been able to be a part of the program at Jefferson High School. Obviously, I grew up in Charlestown. I love sports. I love the game of baseball. And they say you grow up gripping the ball, but in the end, the ball has a grip on you. So I think that's kind of what has happened to me. I love it. And I thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight and to recognize these young men. And I'm sure that the young men who aren't here feel honored that you took the time to tip your hat to them. So thank you so much. We'll get a picture there.
And thank you all for taking the time. I know it's your summer, so I appreciate you being recognized, and it's nice to hear
Oh,
All right. Cougars on 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Coach. I appreciate you. Gentlemen, appreciate you. Thank you.
Mr. Fogel, was that whole stack the baseball team?
Pardon me. Yes,
Was-
the whole stack was the
Was the
baseball team.
Okay,
I love that he had so many details on all the players. Off the cuff, all I gave him was a list of names. So everything else was just because he knows his kids and he gets involved with them, which is awesome. And it's, I think, something that we see very often in our school system. It's a very, it's a tribute to him and his program. So thank you all very much. That's our presentation for this evening.
summed up by dedication and passion.
Right. Thank you.
So thank you. All right, next we have a presentation on elementary liaison positions.
Evening, President Skinner, members of the board, and Dr. Gibson Learn. We come back to you tonight with the version 2 of the elementary liaisons. Earlier in the year, we brought to you the budget proposal, and that was presented to you based off of ideas from elementary principals through LSIC and many other times that we met with them. And one of the things that they brought to the attention was, Jason, can you go to that next slide, please? One of the things that they brought to our attention was that their teachers did not have enough time to do the hands-on work with the kids in the classroom. And that came from a variety of reasons. Most of it centered, though, on the administrative duties that they had to do as far as IEP was concerned. So we worked through that, and we brought to the Board of Education earlier in the year, like I said, a version which was centered around service personnel. And one of the things that the board members asked was for us to go back and look at that again to see if we could rework it to have it be a professional position so that we could allow for more responsibilities and roles to be placed on those individuals that possibly wouldn't be able to be done if it was a service person. So we revisited that, and we are bringing those ideas back to you. So Mr. Banks and myself were able to meet with all the elementary principals at the end of the year after one of their trainings. I appreciate them staying after and listening to Mr. Banks and I talk to them and get their ideas. Based on the feedback that they presented to us, they want to concentrate on the coordination. Jason, next slide, please. The coordination and scheduling of the IEPs. There's a lot that goes into working that, whether it's meeting with the parents, getting the parents on the phone, making sure that providers can be there. They also wanted to ensure that those liaisons have a common day at their school so that things can be scheduled out. So if I'm working with Ms. Johnson at North Jefferson, then I know maybe every Wednesday I'm going to be at North Jefferson all day long, so that whenever somebody has planning, they know where I'm at and they can stop in and see me and ask questions or work through things with them. And finally, the last thing that they wanted to do was not to ensure that they are writing IEPs. These individuals are not going to be IEP writers. We do not want to get to a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach here in Jefferson County. That's not the purpose of an IEP. But what we do want to ensure is that the teachers are supported when they have to write the IEP. And that's what these liaisons will also help to do. I was able to bring Ms. Johnson in tonight. I had 2 other principals that were going to try to make it, but due to some personal reasons, they weren't able to come tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Johnson for a couple of minutes from a principal perspective, for her to be able to kind of talk to you about the liaison position at North Jefferson, which will also kind of mirror over into other elementary schools.
Thank you. Just wanted to say first, thank you to the ladies and gentlemen of the board and Dr. Gibson Learn for giving us the opportunity to speak, and myself on behalf of the elementary school principals. As Mr. Wink said, he was gracious enough to get us together, a whole group, and kind of go over our vision for this position and how we could coordinate amongst the schools to make it uniformed and consistent, to make it feasible for a few people to do all of the elementary schools. So just to say a little, as a former special education teacher, as an administrator who's over special education in my building, there is an overwhelming amount of work above and beyond the classroom that goes into the special ed process. And that's where we see a lot of teacher burnout. That's where a lot of our additional times administrators are vested. And these are some things that we think these liaison positions could drastically help with. You know, just looking, as Mr. Wink said, with even just training, you know, having a person that's consistently at multiple schools and can make sure we're all following that same process appropriately. But the coordination of meetings, inviting our related service providers who may also have 3 or 4 different schools, coordinating schedules, doing the paperwork components of those, having the ability to chair meetings are all things that we think will take a huge amount of undue burden off of our special ed teachers. Our goal really is to provide continuity of services for the students, to expedite the process as they're going through the initial IEPs and eligibility phases, to make sure that we remain in compliance as a school system, that we're checking our T's and are crossing our T's and dotting our I's, so to speak. And that again is where I think we lose a lot of time that teachers could be planning for instruction. We're talking about teachers that are teaching multiple subjects to multiple grade levels of students, all at varying ability levels. And they really need that 45 minutes a day of planning time to invest in planning for their instruction, the same as our general education teachers. So this position would take a lot of those administrative tasks off. They also have the ability to coordinate with the general education teacher, the special education teacher, related service providers, you know, behavioral specialist, administration, gather all of that information and provide it to the special ed teacher so that they can ultimately write a very comprehensive, targeted, and individualized IEP, which is the goal. You know, again, just that time frame of collecting all of that data, all of those pieces of information, I think we lose a lot. So our goal with these positions is to create 3 professional positions. They would each serve 3 to 4 schools, have a caseload of approximately 135 students. Again, not writing the IEP, but just coordinating that process amongst the schools. As Mr. Wing said, our goal would be to assign them to schools by day so that we could plan meetings and other things around that schedule, and they know what to expect and how to plan these things. I thank you to the board for recognizing the need to make this a professional position. I think it will serve our students and our staff better. And our end goal is to provide our students with the highest quality and most targeted instruction possible, and to reduce some teacher burnout and hopefully prevent an exit from special education, which can be very overwhelming without some of these safeguards. So thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
So the next slide you have there just gives a breakdown of what we envision of how the liaisons would work if we're approved to have 3. And we looked at one of the things the principals wanted was they did want the feeder pattern kept together. So Paige Jackson that moves into Wright Denny. We also tried to make sure that our largest schools aren't overlapping. Our 2 largest elementary schools in terms of caseload, we don't want them to be on the same person because that's just going to be too much of a load there. The next slide, Mr. Johnson, there is our job duties that we have laid out. And I'm not going to read through these, but these are definitely not all encompassing, but they are the major things that we believe that these elementary liaisons should be doing. And when people sign on the line for this position, then they'll have no doubt exactly what we're expecting from them. And finally, as Ms. Johnson said, each liaison would be responsible for right now 130 students. The way our populations are going, that could go up or down depending on the day. But right now we're looking at about 130 per student or per liaison. That's exclusive of speech. We did not put speech on there. We did not put gifted students on there. And that is the same or roughly the same as Washington and Jefferson's case manager, which does that job full time. So we're keeping those positions pretty evenly. We are recommended the contract days be 205. There's a couple of reasons why that. Number one, when teachers have finally exited the building, that's when the records really are able for us to pull them, for us to get them from one school to the next, for us to get everything to the State Department and ensure full closure. While the teachers are in the building, we can't get that done because things are constantly changing. It's also important that we get those records from feeder school to feeder school or from elementary school over to middle school, because that's those case managers for the middle schools want those things. They come in over the summer and work with them. So those 5 days in addition to training before they come in would allow them to have a few flex days there when teachers aren't in the building to be able to work possibly with principals and that type of thing. So later on in the agenda, there is a recommendation for the approval of these, but at this time I will accept any questions that you might have for these positions. Yes, ma'am.
So are you thinking to hire for these positions current special ed teachers that we have here in Jefferson County schools? Do they have any kind of priority for these positions?
No, ma'am, they won't have any kind of priority because we would open it up to everybody from wherever they are. The hiring practice does not allow us to say, yep, Jefferson County, you get top priority there. We're going to put that out there and we're going to take whoever is the best and can do the job the most efficiently for our teachers. I mean, if it happens to be a Jefferson County and that's what the interview panel says, then that's who we would take.
I just thought that you had such a shortage of special ed teachers that you're using a lot of subs, and maybe an incentive for special ed teachers, a way to, kind of like a benefit that you would maybe look at them first, since they, have dedicated
Certainly.
service to
And
the
one of the things
county.
that's always been Dr. Gibson Learn's in importance is that it's a panel decision. It's not an individual decision for me. There's at least 3 to 5 members. So I let the panel decide.
Was this job description, is this used in Raleigh County? Is
No,
that-
ma'am. No, ma'am.
just When I pull it up, it says Raleigh County, so I was just.
Yes, ma'am.
wondering-
That's something to do with the PDF, because if you look at multiple different job descriptions, there's something with the heading in the PDF. It's not a Raleigh County job description. No, ma'am.
I was just wondering if these positions are, in other counties, or if they're being used in other counties since.
I have, in my short amount of time, I have never heard liaisons done. They use diagnosticians in a lot of counties, or they do have positions that actually write all the IEPs, but I have never seen a liaison like this in West Virginia. Not to say they aren't somewhere though.
Will they have offices like at the board office, or?
No, ma'am. They will have offices. They will have spaces in each individual school. We do not want them we don't want them parking themselves at the board office, because that's not the purpose of their job. The purpose of their job is to be in those schools. That's not to say that they won't be meeting with us, every month in our department meeting, but the main purpose is for them to be visible in their schools.
It sounds like they're not going to be case managers. Is that correct?
That is correct. There will be an individual case manager of each school. That's correct.
And the last time at the budget meeting, I had suggested compensating special ed teachers for writing IEPs. Has that been considered?
It was considered, yes, ma'am. Our special education students have anywhere between 2 and 5 IEPs a year that they can come through. We've had some students that have had 8 versions of an IEP over the course of the year. So when we start talking financial, that's really not something that's in my purview to bring up. But we felt like this was a better way, because we can pay our teachers and we can pay them extra, but that's still taking the time away from their family. That's still taking the time, still putting that stress on them, and money doesn't necessarily take the stress away from them. And that's one of the things that Jefferson County, in my opinion, is about, is that
I
family
don't
first
understand
mentality.
what you're saying. So, they have to write the IEPs anyway,
But they don't have to chair the meetings. They don't have to do everything
Right.
else that goes along with that.
right?
So-
I'm just asking about compensating for the extra work that they are doing, like you said, taking time away from their families, because there's not any extra planning time given to the
Mhm.
special ed teachers. So that's what I was asking.
And I did not entertain it deeply, because this was the first version that we wanted to go through. That would also have to go through Ms. Loring and hiring, or the benefits that I can't speak to as well.
One more thing, the job description that is provided online in the agenda is slightly different from.
Yes, ma'am.
From this.
The one that you have in front of you that you are going to approve will be changed. It has not, the one that you
This
have
one.
in draft on the agenda has not been approved to be put out yet.
This
When it
one.
goes to the job, the ones you have in printed form will be the duties. Yes, ma'am.
So where it says chair some IEP committee meetings as a designee for the principal. So anybody can be a designee of the principal. Is that the way?
That
it
is a-
works?
That under policy 2419, any professional is permitted as a principal designee to chair meetings. Yes, ma'am. That is,
But so this just says some, because in the other document, it sounded like it was all, one of the duties, so.
they would not be chairing all. It would be the principals. We still have some principals that want to chair the meetings.
I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wink, I
Yes,
would
sir.
like to thank you for digging deep in those pockets and finding enough to finance 3 of these positions, because 2 would not be adequate. And this is much more usable for our building level people. So you did a really good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have the Deputy Superintendent of Operations update. Mrs. White.
Good evening. First, Mr. Brown, I want to thank you for serving as a member of the Board of Education. It's been a pleasure to work with you as a member. I'm going to start with some maintenance and bond updates. We have the Shepherdstown Middle School roof, which is a bond project wrapping up. Next, we'll begin the flooring in that school. And at TA Lowry, our roof is well underway. Wright Denny floor replacement work began on June 23rd. And the Blue Ridge Elementary flooring will began on the 24th. We've also begun work on the CW Shipley awning at the front of that school. And I'm very happy to report that the TA Lowry HVAC SBA major improvement project is now completed. In maintenance, that we have the summer painting crew. We had deferred painting due to the pandemic for a season or 2. So the crew will be going around and completing school requests for painting this summer. So we're very excited to re-engage with that. Transportation and child nutrition are busy this summer providing vital services for our school summer programs, and their efforts are going very, very well. Very smooth summer school. I want to provide you an update about Harpers Ferry Middle School this evening. A commercial fire alarm went off for Harpers Ferry the evening of June 13th. The fire alarm system had a sprinkler line burst. This caused a ceiling in one of the classrooms to collapse. This is in the old section of the building. On June 14th, the next day, the fire marshal conducted an inspection. His findings required us to have a structural engineer to evaluate what repairs needed to be made to ensure the structural integrity and safety of the old section of Harpers Ferry Middle School remained intact. So first, under the direction of Mr. Brandon Caton, we had to ensure that we were asbestos free and that asbestos was not present. Mr. Caton completed that work with a company, and we have verified there is no asbestos in that area. So next, the work began to clean the debris out of that particular classroom. This week, we'll have a structural engineer. He's going to visit to evaluate all of the rooms in the old section of Harpers Ferry Middle School. At the onset of this process, I want you to know that we contacted our insurance company. An adjuster has already been out to evaluate that project to determine what kind of coverage we'll have on the project. In the anticipated scope of work, we're likely going to need to shore or brace the ceiling temporarily and then add steel channels so that we can reattach air handlers, sprinkler lines, and ductwork to the steel channels. We'll then need to add a new ceiling, a new drop ceiling and grid. And the floor has begun to buckle in the one classroom, so that will need replaced. Due to this being an emergency, we need it to be timely so that we can begin work, be hopeful that we complete the work. We're going to use local emergency procurement procedures to proceed with this work so that it does not get slowed down per policy 8200, so that we can navigate this project quickly. We will keep the board updated as we work our way through this project. That's my update for this evening, unless you have questions.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well,
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting from June 13th, 2022? Second,
Second.
question or discussion? All in favor of the minutes from June 13th, say aye.
Uh,
Oppose? Thank you. No citizens. Excuse me. No citizens comments.
No, ma'am.
Consent agenda.
Yes, ma'am. Prior to the board's review of the consent agenda, I would like to make an introduction. As the superintendent, one of the highest responsibilities that I have is to recommend principals to the board. Principals responsible for the culture, the safety, the instruction of hundreds of students under their care. And it is a duty that we take very seriously. As Mr. Wink alluded to earlier, we have a panel that includes parents, service staff, and faculty senate staff, as well as other instructional administration. And we require unanimous recommendation from every single member of the party, or I will not move forward with the nomination. It's too difficult a job to not have the support of the entire community. So it is with great pride that I will be recommending to the board for the next principal of Charlestown Middle School, Miss Nicole Reed. And before I ask Ms. Reed to come up here for a moment, I would like to point out some of the things that we've been talking about this evening are about the culture here in Jefferson County. And one of the things that we do like to do, and I think is very important, is that we grow our own, that we honor the people who've been here. We honor the people who've done the work. Ms. Reed's family has very deep roots here in Jefferson and in education. For those of you who don't know, mother recently retired after 49 years at C.W. Shipley. I think you might have heard of her, Mr. Osborne. Yeah, exactly. You might have heard a rumor about that. And she's certainly, she's been here as a teacher. She's been here as an athletic director, as an assistant principal, and as interim principal. And in all that time, she's worked, she's grown. She obtained her bachelor's degree from Shepherd University. She obtained her master's degree from APU. So she's made sure that she's done the work to prepare herself for this job, both by building relationships, through her loyalty, through her support of her families, and through growing herself as an instructional leader. I also know that no one can do such a difficult job without the love and support of their family behind them. So I'd like to ask Ms. Reed to come up and introduce her family, if you don't mind.
Good evening. This is my family. This is my wife, Kristen, my oldest son, Everett, and my youngest son, Landon. I would like to take this time to thank the Board of Education as well as Dr. Gibson Learn for this opportunity, and not only that, but the continued support that you have shown Charlestown Middle School, Jefferson County Schools, and myself. I'd also like to thank my family for constantly pushing me to be better and to go after my dreams. Without them, this would not be possible. Throughout this whole process, I've taken a lot of time to reflect on my time in education, not just as an educator, but also as a student and even before. One of my earliest memories of anything education was when I was 4, Mom drugged me to school one summer afternoon because she was tasked with giving the new principal a tour of the building. And I remember the feeling of excitement that day, because it was something new. They were in a new direction. Mom was excited, I could tell. I truly remember that. But I also was excited because I knew that one day that principal would also be my principal. Little did I know then, that was the start of many school-based experiences that would shape my desire to be an instructional leader. This has truly been a humbling experience to be named the next principal of Charlestown Middle School. Over the last 13 years, I've grown to love being a Panther with my whole heart. I've had the pleasure to witness firsthand the great community that is Charlestown Middle School. We have great teachers, staff, parents, and students, and I'm excited to collaborate with all of them to take Charlestown Middle School to the next level. I'm ready to get to work and look forward to a great school year. Go Panthers.
Now, Ms. Reed, the only disappointing thing about your whole presentation No purple. You have to learn from Mr. Wink. Good evening.
Good evening. The only change that we have on the personnel actions this evening is on the full personnel actions list, line 16. We have an action or a recommendation that we need to rescind. Again, that's number 16. And with that, we just require it to be deleted from the recommendations for this evening.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment of deleting number 16 on the personnel actions?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Any question or discussion?
Yeah, I have a question about number 26. I thought that position was temporary. Just, and it was created to find a special ed school, create the special ed school. And so it was meant to be for about a year.
The interim, well, the position itself, not the interim, but the position, the requirements and the duties are still ongoing. That has not been met, and it was also in the budget approval process, and so that position is still budgeted for next year. So the need for it has not lapsed. The interim status of a component of that as well is that when we posted the position, it was for an assistant superintendent for special education. And there was a committee that convened, and the decision at that time was to assign the title as interim. However, it was posted competitively. It was posted without the interim status. And therefore, because the position is ongoing and Mr. Wink was and still is the successful candidate for that position, that at this point in time, we can move forward with dropping the interim status from his title.
I'm sorry,
which is-
so you reposted it? Is that
No,
what
we
you're
did
saying?
not. We did not repost it. We were not
Then
required
how do you
to
know he's the most successful?
from the
candidate?
first posting. That was the posting that was.
I don't, it doesn't, I'm not understanding,
So
I guess.
We posted a job for.
Well, how do you know if he's the most successful candidate if you've not opened it up
We did.
again a second time?
No, you did not need to post it again the second time. He was a successful candidate from that initial posting. And it was opened up. It was an external posting. And we interviewed internal and external candidates for it.
And so I just, I mean, I'm not saying that he hasn't done a good job with what he's been doing, but the idea was that it would be to create a special ed school, a special school.
Right.
And I haven't really heard anything about the progress of that. So is that the position or is there something else?
Thank you. That's a very good question. When the board first created that position and we had the discussion, that position of assistant superintendent for special education had a number of goals that the board set forth. Some of those goals were to reduce the number of students who were receiving services outside of the school district, and to pull those students back in so that they could be in their community and served here. One of the many factors of that was whether or not they would need to be able to provide additional services here to meet those students' needs. Another factor was that at the time, our school system was in a status with the state where we were in a warning status for them based on that. We also, the board had discussed their desire to have a more robust set of special education services for those. I believe that during that time, Mr. Wink has made progress on all of those factors. That job was posted as an assistant superintendent for special education. It was not posted as an interim. Mr. Wink won that job in a competitive process and was appointed to that job. We applied the interim status to that to determine whether or not there was anything else to be added to that, or whether or not we felt that that was the right configuration. And certainly based on the progress that we've seen, we felt that it is. All of our legal obligations have been met. And quite frankly, the services for students with disabilities have been, I would say, vastly increased and better managed by his presence.
Thank you. Any other questions or?
Yeah, I have
Um,
questions about the treasurer's report. Were you gonna present something?
First, I wanted to say that I have some budget journal entry supplements in front of you. This is the last meeting in June, and it's required to be approved prior to June 30th. Most of them revolve around the last salary pay that was made after everything was posted. And then we also got 4 grants in this morning that I went ahead and approved because I had to approve them before the end of the year. So that's just part of the budget journal entry supplements for all of that. I don't know if there's any other questions on that, and then I can get to the treasurer's report.
Any question on which part?
Oh, sorry, the budget journal entry supplements, that was the additions that I have in front of you
Yeah,
today.
I'm not sure if it's which part it's on, but I have this ongoing question about the EPIC positions, like for example, the Weavis position. I understand we're paying for a position at Weavis. Is that housed at the board office, that position?
It is technically, they are an EPIC employee, but yes, they are, they do come into our office and they are based there because they are our Weavis provider for the whole county.
I'm just trying to understand because we used to have more students. One person did attendance in Weavis, and now it sounds like there are 2.5 Weavis positions. Is that right?
So the questions that you're asking are not questions regarding the budget matter that she's discussing.
Well, it's because it's in the budget, that Weavis position.
In the budget that has already been approved, ma'am, are payments to EPIC for contracted services. At the public budget meeting, which was recorded and which anyone can see, we did a presentation before the board at which we outlined in detail, in writing and orally, all of the services that we are purchasing from EPIC. Mr. Osborne is the chair of the EPIC board and sits in all of those meetings. And it is certainly a service, much like many services that we purchase, that we believe benefit our students. And all of those are in the budget. All of those have been presented to the board. So if your question is about whether or not we are purchasing Weavis services from EPIC, yes, we are. Those were listed in the services that we gave you a packet and gave you a presentation on. And yes, the funding for that is in our budget.
Yeah, so there was some general information given to the board, but nothing about specific positions, and that's what I keep asking about. So yeah, it was just general, like, early childcare, or just, there were general categories. So I'm trying to find out exactly what we are getting from EPIC, because it's in this every month to approve. And
Well, and certainly Sherry Barnett, who is the director of EPIC, and Jim Butts, who is the treasurer for EPIC, have indicated a willingness to sit down and to meet with you and to review the EPIC budget and what services that they have and what services they sell to Jefferson. And we'll be happy to.
Heard that. I mean, the
I will-
treasurer said she would today, but I just found that out today.
Okay.
So.
I would be more than happy. I'll give you both their contact information so that you can set that up, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any further questions on those items.
I can't hear you.
I don't know if there's any further questions on these items.
No, not from me.
Thank you.
I have a question about number 31 on the. Amy, can you explain what we're doing at Jefferson High there with number 31?
Put her to sleep. What was line 31? Oh, okay. Yes, no, great question. I'm glad to outline this one. So what we're looking to do and what we're asking for is that Jefferson High School had the student support facilitator position, which was it's supported what was like the Renaissance program and attendance and other programs at Jefferson High School. And so what we're asking to do is to no longer utilize that position and move the FTE or the position itself into the being able to provide a business education teacher for Jefferson High School.
I think it's great that you're putting it back the way it was because they have needed a business education teacher for a few years. I don't know about the removal of the student support facilitator position. I don't know what value that gave. Is somebody picking up whatever they were doing? Or?
No, there. Okay, so yeah, so they would, the bulk of it and the meat of it would be reassigned to some of the administrators, the counseling program. I'm sure they're going through that process now to be able to reallocate some of the services that it provided, but it was established that the priority right now is to provide the business education program in order to give those students an opportunity to take those courses.
And is that just one position for business?
Yes.
Or do you plan on having more? Or-
Not at this time, because we need to have the students first and have those enrollment numbers, because that's what leads the staffing of our professional teaching positions, or the number of the students that are in that program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's a motion on the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda with the deletion of number 16, say aye. Opposed?
No.
Thank you. Unfinished business. Action on approval of vendor for the South Jefferson Sewer Project.
I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the South Jefferson Sewer Project. We have one bidder, Snyder Environmental, at a price of $178,000.
Is there a motion to approve Snyder Environmental for the South Jefferson Sewer Project? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions or discussion? I have one question, Ms. White.
Yes.
And this may be a naive question, but when they do this project, are they going to be bonded to make sure that everything is completed and finished? And
Typically for projects over $100,000, yes, we require with an AIA contract bonding.
we are with this one since it's 178,000.
We can certainly make that so, ma'am, yes.
Any other questions or discussion? And this is also timely. It needs to be completed ASAP.
It does. This is phase one of this project, and it is timely. It would need to be completed this summer. Upon board approval, we would need approximately 5 weeks to complete phase one of the project.
Just being nosy now. You said phase one.
Yes,
How many phases?
2. Phase one includes replacing tanks, pumps, and putting in distribution boxes in order to eliminate stormwater infiltration into the system. And then phase 2 would be the construction of a drain field at the rear of the school, which would be sized to meet the current regulations per the health department. And we can hold off on that phase if we complete phase 1.
And with that new drain field, we can use the new boxes and pumps and everything. where
Yes,
they'll
it would
be
tie
placed.
into a new drain field in the rear of the school, yes. We would set the stage for all of that in preparation for when we would add an addition, the larger drain field in the rear of the school.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor of approving Snyder Environmental for the South Jefferson Sewer Project, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, under new business, we have the 3 elementary liaison positions. Is there a motion to approve the elementary liaison positions? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I know we had in-depth discussion a little bit ago, but are any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the 3 elementary liaisons, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Superintendent's comments.
Actually, 2 quick comments this evening. Number 1, I would like to give some huge appreciation and some public support for our summer school staff. I don't know how many of you read in the paper today that the Johns Hopkins Gifted and Talented Summer Program, which annually attracts students from around the country, there's a pretty rigorous application process. And with less than 48 hours notice, they were forced to cancel a huge portion of their summer program. Parents who had children already on flights coming in for the program, and it raised quite a kerfuffle, so to speak, and really brought home just the sheer difficulty of staffing in these tough times and staffing during summer. We had this year 1,060 summer school registrants, and those programs are staffed, are running well. Children are getting to school every day. They're being educated. They're having a great time. They're being fed, and they're getting home safely. And that is a testament. I wish that Mr. Alex White, Lee Eversall's the supervisor, director for SOMO, and within that department, Mr. Alex White helps organize summer school. And we have on-site summer school principals, we have teachers, we have bus drivers, we have cooks, we have aides, and running a summer school for 1,000+ kids in a county our size is a major undertaking. And I think sometimes you have to notice when things work the way that they're supposed to. I think sometimes people don't notice, like, oh, okay, everything's going great. Yeah, everything's going great. So recognize that as well. So just shout out to our summer school staff. And the second thing is I would like to add my voice to the chorus of thanks to Mr. Brown for your service during a fairly critical time for us and in what were difficult circumstances. And I appreciate your service and your support, sir.
All right. Thank you. And I understand we have an executive session on a student issue. Is
We
that
have
correct?
executive session on both land and a student discipline issue. I do not expect any action to be taken.
Okay, so no action.
No, ma'am.
Is there a motion to go into executive session for land and student discipline? Say, is there a motion? Thank you, Mr. Brown. A second. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much.